Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Center for the Women of New York Financial Literacy Series workshop on New York State income tax. New York State personal income tax overview is the third of a series of tax workshops. If you missed the workshop on the general income tax overview, that is on our website, as well as deductions and credits. Tonight, we are hosting our guest speaker, Kathy Carroll, and I'm Victoria Pilati, and our Vice President and Program Committee Chair, Cecilia Venosto Weigel, will also be co-hosting. The Center for the Women of New York advocates for women's rights and full equality for women. Since 1987, CWNY has been empowering women to reach their full potential by offering services that provide the skills, information, and support they need to address economic, emotional, and legal challenges. Given the vast women's needs due to the pandemic in 2021, CWNY's focus is women's health and well-being, both physical and mental, and women's financial independence.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I just want to share the programs that CWNY offers. We offer educational programs, as well as support services and classes. We do have panel discussions and webinar on issues like this one, and domestic violence, trafficking awareness, health and wellness, financial literacy and independence, and career advancement. The services we offer currently are a caregiver support group, which is for those of us who take care of elderly in our families, women in crisis support group, English as second language classes, legal team. So if you have any legal inquiry, you can email us. We have a team of attorneys who will get back to you via email. And fitness classes, we have a Zumba class and a cardio resistance class. Referrals. So if you don't know if we offer any service, like you can always reach out. If we don't offer the service, we'll guide you in the right direction. Our upcoming events are Health Fair in May. We'll have a career conference in June, a women's art exhibit when it's safe to do it outdoors in Fort Totten. We are planning sustainable gardening and green activities, a book club on women's issues, as well as a film club on women's issues as well during the summer. If you would like to download this PowerPoint presentation, it will be available in a few days at cwny.org/past events. And if you don't mind giving us your zip code and your name, that will be very helpful to us. It's always good to have data about people who are taking advantage of our services. So you will find in the chat a quick survey. It's just 2 questions. And if you can please complete that, we will greatly appreciate that. For questions and answers, your questions will be
addressed. Go back to the last slide.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
So if you dialed in, please email your zip code to events@cwny.org. But if you are on this Zoom call, please do follow the link that is in the chat.
Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
So for your questions, they will be addressed by Kathy, Carroll at the end of the presentation. You can ask questions at any time. You can use the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom screen to, and she will address them at the end. If you dialed in again, you can email us your questions to events@cwny.org, and someone will be monitoring the chat, and your questions will also be answered. Victoria, you go ahead.
Our guest speaker, Kathy Carroll, is a professional accountant, enrolled agent to practice before the Internal Revenue Service. She has been practicing accounting and providing bookkeeping services since 1981 to the present. She works with individual and corporate clients. Kathy directed and ran the Student Association Income Tax Preparation Program at Queens College for 26 years. She also ran an annual seminar at the International Students and Scholars Office at Queens College. These programs provided free on-campus tax prep and advice to students. She received a bachelor's degree in accounting from CW Post Center of Long Island University and attended a graduate program at New York University. Kathy volunteers at the Center for the Women of New York as our current treasurer and former vice president of finance. She provides job and vocational training, presents at our financial literacy programs, and is the CWNY Work Readiness Program advisor. Kathy may be reached at KM Carroll Accounting, and here is her address and her telephone number. So Kathy will begin now with her presentation. Take it away, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Okay, now this is our third part of our workshop, Tax Trauma Terminated. This evening we'll be talking about the New York State Personal Income Tax Overview. In parts 1 and 2 of our Tax Trauma Terminated series, the focus was on the federal income tax administered by the Internal Revenue Service. When most people think of taxes, they think of the federal forms, 1040 and the various federal IRS forms. But of course, there is more to annual tax filings than the IRS because New York State wants their share of your hard-earned dollars as well. Nearly every state in the United States has a personal income tax. There are only 7 states with no income tax, and these states they're in the South and the West: Alaska, Florida, Nevada, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. As residents of New York, we often feel that we are heavily taxed. In fact, New York State is only the 7th highest taxed in the country, with a top rate of 8.82%. The highest tax rate in the nation is in California, which has a top personal tax rate of 13.3%. Filing a New York State tax return can seem very automatic when using a tax preparation program such as TurboTax or Tax Act or any of the programs that are on the free file for the IRS. All of the free file programs that are available on the IRS website can also be used for New York State. When one fills in all the information for the federal 1040, almost without effort, the New York State return appears as well. This certainly saves time in preparing the state return, but if care is not taken to understand and review the state return, errors can occur and refund dollars can be lost. The 2 major New York State forms are IT 201 and IT 203. The IT 201 is the New York State resident form for taxpayers who live in New York State. The IT 203 is for part-year residents and non-resident taxpayers. One may ask, why would a non-resident have to file a New York State tax return? But if you work in New York and live in another state, you must file a New York non-resident return, as well as a return for the state in which you live. So I have a few clients that live in New Jersey and some that live in Connecticut, but they work in New York. So they have to file their own state tax as well as a New York State tax. So it can get a little bit complex. You can wind up filing quite a few different returns. As already mentioned, most information and income for your New York State return will be similar to what you are putting on your federal return. As with the federal filing, all income information we found on your Form W-2, various 1099s, and other annual tax documents. In the first part of this series, we went over how to identify all of these different documents. So they are applicable to both the federal and the state. When doing your own tax with a tax program, be sure to input the information carefully and review it carefully before submitting your e-file, because once you send the e-file, you can't get it back. Although the federal and the state returns are generally similar, there are some significant differences. New York State is not obligated to follow the IRS rules of taxation, and in many cases does not. This is called decoupling, where the state is going to treat certain tax items differently than the IRS does. In some cases, this decoupling benefits the taxpayer, but in other cases, it does not. The first section of the IT 201 tax form is basically a recap of the income shown on the federal return. The next two sections of the New York State return are additions and subtractions from the federal income. The most common additions to New York State income are known as 414H and NYC IRC 125. Both of these items can be found in box 14 of the W-2 for most city and state workers, including teachers, police officers, sanitation workers, and any other municipal employees. Now, this is the W-2 form. I wanted to show the sample W-2 to show the different boxes that, that are included. The W-2 obviously gives you your wages and your taxes withheld, but it also gives you a lot of other information. And the items that need to be added back on the state return are generally shown in box 14. That would be where someone that worked for the city would have these 414H and IRC 125 amounts. Although the 414H amount must be added to the New York State income in the present, the reason for this addition has to do with the future. The W-2 figure represents the amount that will be part of the city or state employee's pension when they retire. As we will see shortly, New York State does not tax any portion of a municipal pension, federal government, New York State, and New York City, once the person actually retires. So since it is tax-free later, the state feels that they must tax it now in yearly increments. They have to get their money one way or the other. As mentioned, New York State does not tax any portion of a municipal pension once a person retires. Additionally, the state does not tax the first $20,000 of any private pension received by the taxpayer. That would be $40,000 for a joint return, provided that the husband and wife have separate pensions. For example, if there's just one pension of $40,000, only $20,000 of that would be not taxable. But if the husband has a $20,000 pension and the wife has a $20,000 pension, the full $40,000 would not be taxable in that case. Interest earned on United States savings bonds is not taxable to New York State, and Social Security benefits that are taxed by the IRS are not taxable on the state return either. The Internal Revenue Service can tax up to 85% of a person's Social Security benefits, depending on what their other income includes. But on the state return, all Social Security benefits are tax-free. Now, this is the standard deduction amounts for New York State. This differs significantly from the federal standard deduction amounts. So if you are, the standard deduction is based on your filing status. So the first one is actually for dependents. This would be basically for people, kids in college that might have a part-time job, people that are dependents and earn a small amount of money. So if you are single and you are someone's dependent, which be marking item C, yes, Your standard deduction is extremely low. It's $3,100. If you're a single and you are not someone's dependent, your standard deduction is $8,000. If you're married filing joint return, it's $16,050. Married filing separate return would be $8,000, which is the same as single. Head of household with a qualifying person, which would be usually a dependent, the standard deduction is $11,200, and a qualifying widower would be $16,050, which is the same as the married filing joint standard deduction. The chart in the previous slide shows us the standard deduction amounts for New York State. As we mentioned, these amounts are significantly lower than the federal amounts. For example, the standard deduction for a single person on the federal level is $12,400. What this means in real terms is if one earned $12,400 in 2020, technically they do not have to file a federal return, but they would definitely have to file a New York State return due to the lowest standard deduction of $8,000. So in reality, there's very few people out there that would just file a state return because the federal and the state go together. So basically, if you earn more than $8,000, you do have some type of filing requirement. So you most likely will be filing the federal and the state. Unlike the IRS, New York State permits a $1,000 dependent exemption for each dependent. This does not include the taxpayers themselves. Many years ago, on both the federal and the state return, there was a personal exemption for the taxpayer and the taxpayer's spouse, as well as the dependents. On the federal level, there is no dependency exemption anymore since the TCJA came in, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. But New York State does permit $1,000 exemption per dependent. Due to the $10,000 cap on real estate taxes on the federal level, this was also part of the TCJA, and the high federal standard deduction, many taxpayers, even those who own homes, are no longer able to itemize their deductions on the federal return. However, the taxpayer may be able to itemize on the state return. For example, a single taxpayer with $11,000 in real estate taxes and no other deductions would be able to itemize on the state, but not on the federal, because their real estate taxes would cause them to exceed the state standard deduction of $8,000, but not the federal standard deduction of $12,400. By itemizing on the state return, the taxpayer is likely to receive a larger refund. This is actually the opposite of years past. Before the TCJA, usually someone might be able to itemize on the federal, but they definitely would not be able to itemize on the state just because of the mathematics involved. But nowadays, it's pretty much the opposite. You might be able to itemize on the state, but not the federal. A new deduction that is available to standard deduction filers on the federal return is not available on the state return and must be added back. This is the $300 charitable contributions deduction that is available for the 2020 tax year. So on the federal, if you contribute up to $300, you can deduct it in addition to your standard deduction. On the state, you can't do that. So it has to be added back. New York State has many of the same credits that are available on the federal level. As discussed in part 2 of our series, a credit reduces one's tax on a dollar-for-dollar basis. Some of these credits are just percentages of what is calculated on the federal return when calculating them for the state. For example, although a separate form, IT-215, must be filed for the New York State Earned Income Credit, the end result is that the New York State credit is 30% of the federal Earned Income Credit. There's no new calculation to be done on the state return. It's just You have to file the separate form, and then it's just basically a math calculation. Some credits have different requirements for New York State than they do for the federal return. For example, the child tax credit is available on the federal return for all children under the age of 17, including children born in 2020. For New York State, the child tax credit is not available until a child is 4 years old. So if you have, obviously, if you have a child 4 or under, you're going to get a very good credit on the federal, but on the state, you're not going to get it at all. Similarly, the education credit is available to both undergraduate and graduate students through the American Opportunity Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit on a 1040 return. On the New York State return, this credit is only available to undergraduate students. New York State and New York City through the New York State return have some credits that are unique to the state and the city. An example of one of these credits is the clean heating fuel credit that has to be filed on the separate form IT-241, which allows a taxpayer using home heating oil to obtain credit based on the number of gallons used during the year. Taxpayers should ask their oil company to provide a letter showing the number of gallons used for bioheat. And a couple of the local companies they send it out automatically to the taxpayers. I noticed quite a few of them from Skaggs Walsh and a couple of the other local oil companies, but this is a pretty good credit. Some people have gotten like close to $100 credit because of this credit that they have here. So if you're using oil in your home and you haven't gotten a letter from the oil company, you might want to call them and ask them if they participate in this, this program. Another credit available from New York City, which is administered through the state return, is a city school tax credit. It's $63 for single taxpayers and $125 on a joint return. This credit is refundable to non-filers as well as taxpayers. The credit refund can be obtained by filing form NYC 210. Now, anyone that's actually filing their tax return, the IT-201, does not have to file the NYC 210. This form is basically for people that are not filing a tax return. Perhaps they're under the filing limit, or maybe they don't have any real type of income, but they're eligible to get this credit by filing this special form, the NYC 210. The full list of available credits and their corresponding forms can be found on pages 8 and 9 in the instructions for Form IT-201. These instructions can be found on the New York State Tax Department website, tax.ny.gov. In addition to all forms and instructions, this website provides a huge amount of information about taxes and tax-related matters for New York State and New York City. The City of New York and the City of Yonkers use the New York State tax forms to collect and administer their city taxes. The maximum New York City tax rate is currently 3.876%. New York City employees, policemen, firemen, teachers, sanitation workers who live outside the city limits must file Form 1127 with their New York State returns in order to pay their New York City tax. Both the IRS and New York State have e-file systems for filing returns. This is part of all the tax programs that are advertised on the IRS website. They're really encouraging everyone to e-file because it's the quickest way to process the return and to get your refund the fastest way. While the IRS strongly recommends e-file, New York State has mandated the e-file. It's been mandated for approximately the last 5 years, but every year they try to encourage more and more people to actually follow this mandate. For this reason, many tax programs will allow the state return to be e-filed, even if the federal return is printed and mailed at the post office. However, it has been my experience that New York State will not reject a paper return, especially if you have to pay and send them a check. They'll take it if you mail it to them. So thank you very much. And that's our information on New York State income tax for this evening.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Oh, that's like so much information. I feel
Stuff.
like that's why people use accountants, right?
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Now it is open to questions. And again, you can put your questions in the chat. And if you have dialed in, you can email your questions to events@cwny.org. And let me see if we do have, I see that Lana had put here in the chat, if you would like to become a member. As you all know, like we are, as we mentioned before, we offer programs like this. So there are the links to donate and become a member if you're not a member. We would love to have you. Feel free to put any questions in the chat, but I guess in the meantime, I can start by, so like for a layperson, Kathy, how, like, it is so much information, and I didn't realize that there were so many little differences here and there between state and federal.
There really are. And actually, the question, the information that I was saying about that child tax credit, you know, some of the things, even when I'm working with this stuff every day, I don't remember all the specifics. And especially with the tax programs, you kind of, since they do it automatically, that's what I'm saying, you have to really be careful and kind of like understand what's behind all these numbers that are being input. I had a client and we could not understand why he was not getting it's called the Empire State Child Tax Credit. And then I realized, I said, oh, his baby is only a year old. And I'm like, that's why he's not getting this credit, because he was upset. He was like, how come I'm getting this huge federal credit for the child and nothing on the state? And then I, you know, as I say, it's like I didn't have it in the top of my mind. I'm thinking, oh, there's something wrong with this program. We put the information in wrong, but then that's it. It's like, but it won't tell you on the screen, yeah, your baby is only 1, so you're not getting this credit. So it's very, a lot of the state stuff is very complicated. And also all these different forms I'm mentioning, when you do it in the tax program, it actually prints out all these forms. So you can have a federal tax return that when you print it out, maybe it's 5 or 6 pages. You're going to have a state return that's like 20 pages long, just because almost every single one of these credits has its own form that has to be e-filed or in the past printed and mailed in. So it can be pretty different.
Yeah, it's pretty complex. I was saying, like, how do you find all this forms? Like, what would be, and I know I always ask this question to you, what would be the first stop for a layperson doing their taxes? Like, and I know, Victoria, you have resources to share with the audience, but like from you, Kathy, like if I am doing my taxes on my own, I go to the IRS for federal, and is it your advice that I should be checking the state as well and learning? How do I learn in the most effective and economical way?
Well, I think the best place to start, especially for a non-accountant, is to just look at the IRS website and the state website and see, you know, how they classify income and what the potential deductions are, like what would apply to your situation. So, you know, because every person's situation is different. So I think that the websites themselves are a good place to start. I have a book that I always buy every year, but it's really kind of technical, but it's actually very good. It's J.K. Lasser's Personal Income Tax. It's almost the size of a telephone book, but that has a lot of good information in it too. But you have to really, you know, it's a little technical for the average taxpayer, but it does have a lot of good information in it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all your advice. It's definitely helpful as always. And I know someone did ask in the chat, but I'm not sure if everyone can see the question. If we could send this presentation, as Victoria said in the chat to everyone, will be posted on our website, CWNY.org.
And if I could add that Kathy's presentations for tax workshop 1 and 2, which were equally informative, and if you missed them, you missed a lot. So they're both recordings are on our website in the past events section.
Oh, there's
Right.
also something new that came out today. I actually found out about it about an hour ago. Maybe you girls were aware of it, but apparently just this afternoon, they announced that they're extending the tax season until May 17th,
Interesting.
which is good.
Yes.
So, and there's other things going on too. It's been a very active week for tax information. So, so anyway, it's a good thing they're extending it, because a couple of the other things that they are doing as part of the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan is really going to like mess up tax returns. So they're going to need to extend this thing, which they seemingly did. So
Kathy,
Thank you, Kath.
thanks, Kathy. And because I was paying attention to your other 2 workshops, you did mention that deadlines for business filings stay put.
yes,
The same here, right?
actually, yeah, and actually one of them just passed this Monday. That's another reason why this was like a very hectic week, because Monday was the deadline for corporation taxes, and that was not extended. So unless you actually, as me as their accountant or them as their business owner, put in their extension form, they're late. So
there is a question in the chat. It says like, do you do taxes? Is there anyone you recommend who can file a single working mom's taxes?
oh yeah, well, yes, I do taxes. That's why I have my business in Whitestone. So certainly if you needed help, you give me a call. So feel free to call my office, and we'll see if we can help you, which I'm sure we can.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Kathy, putting that in the chat again.
Yeah, can you say it, Kathy, and I'll put it in?
Sure. It's the office phone number is 718-767-2299.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for the questions. I think Victoria has some resources to share. Again, Kathy, thank you. It's super useful, and her presentation will be on our website.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So we shared most of these at the other 2 workshops, but we did add to this one the New York State Department of Taxation website that Kathy mentioned in one of her slides, tax.ny.gov. And just like the IRS, it is very user-friendly. It has loads of downloadable forms and lots of instructions. The other important website that Kathy mentioned in past webinars is the efile.com. There are free e-file services that you can use, but Kathy does caution, as always, that you do have to be careful when you file your own taxes and use these services. You have to be very careful to double check what you input. And she also mentioned that some of them are not as free as the others, and they do have eligibility income levels. Am I right, Kathy?
Absolutely. That's totally correct.
So they may say free, but not free for all, or maybe what it offers for free is not as much as a paid subscription. Correct, Kathy?
Right. And also a lot of the free file, if you meet the eligibility requirements, which, as you said, differ for each program that's offered, most of them won't give you the state for free. So
there you go.
Very few of them. But the state, they charge like a nominal fee, like maybe $8, anywhere from $8 to $15. But I would say the majority of them do not include a free state return.
So you'll get federal for free, but
you might have to pay.
You still have to pay your state taxes. So
right.
And the other websites that are very helpful are American Savings Education Council and Choose to Save. We had bankers who gave another workshop who highly recommended these websites: Financial Literacy and Education Commission, Pension and Welfare Benefits Administration, Social Security Administration, and of course, for women like us, we do like targeted information: Women's Institute for Financial Education and Women's Institute for a Secure Retirement. And please do look at AARP. They are a wealth of information, not just on finances like these, but on simple tips, on internet security, on financial security, how to navigate websites and not give away your secure information. So please do check these resources. And again, thank you, Kathy, for your time, your expertise, and your work for the center, your volunteer work.
You're welcome.
Please do contact us. Please visit our website, cwny.org. Again, check out our past events for any other webinars that you might be interested on, any of the other topics that Cecilia mentioned that, of course, impact women. And also do check us out by phone, or our email is info@cwny.org. And you can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we do have a YouTube channel with all of our webinars. And also we have a podcast on Anchor. And do consider becoming a member or donating to our organization at CWNY.org. And do get involved. We also need plenty of volunteers. So thank you for your time tonight. And again, we thank our expert panelist, Kathy Carroll.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you,